Hey everybody, Joe here, and in this session we're going to talk about composition and choosing mood and a little bit of an advanced edit as well. Now we're going to use Nauset Lighthouse, which is this one right here. This is in Cape Cod, and it's the one on the Cape Cod potato chips bag. Now this was what happened on the last day of the trip I was here. However, the day previous, this is what it looked like. Actually, it was 2 days previous. It was rainy. In fact, if we zoom in, you can see, look, you see all the rain coming down here, but it was kind of interesting mood. And I actually found it a more interesting shot than this one. I have some nice shots of this with nice puffy clouds, but this one intrigued me. Now, the problem is there's nothing going on in the sky. So, a couple hours later, as we were heading north from Nauset towards Provincetown, the sky started to clear a bit, and this is what we got. In fact, not too long after this, the sun completely came out. I'm going to use part of this sky in here to make this a more interesting image. And I think you'll see that when we're done, it's actually a much more interesting composition, a much more interesting photograph than this one. So let's make it happen. So here's our basic image, and you can see that I was protecting the highlights. The highlights are a little bit down, but that's okay. And everybody that was with me, this is during a photo workshop, could see that you could see these trees perfectly fine. It's just the way the camera captures them. So let's cut to the chase and just open up the shadows all the way and look at that already. Now, during the rain, reds lose their intensity because red gets absorbed first by water. The greens usually have a little bit more pop to them. So let's go ahead and make that happen. I'm going to add some texture, some clarity. I'm going to add some vibrance to bring those greens back, and then some overall saturation. Now the red is still lacking a bit, so let's come down to use saturation luminance, and we're going to click on the adjustment tool with saturation chosen, and we're going to push up the reds a bit. Let's bring that red back so it looks like that potato chip bag. Also, while we're here, let's get the greens as well. They need to come up to bring back their saturation. So that quickly, we've gone from there to there. The image is looking much more interesting, but it needs a sky. And to do that, we need to go into Photoshop. So I'm going to select our sky. Here's the sky we're going to use, or a piece of it that we're going to use. And let's send both of these images into Photoshop. And we do that with Photo, Edit In, and the answer is not Photoshop, but since we have two images chosen, open as layers in Photoshop. So here's our two images, or here's our images opened up in Photoshop. There's our sky, there's our lighthouse. So the first thing we need to do is we need to create a selection of this area behind the lighthouse. And I've got the lighthouse layer selected. Let's try the magic wand. I'm going to go with the default 32. I have anti-alias on. I don't want contiguous because it needs to go in between all these little pine needles. So let's try that. Let's just click right here in the middle and see how good a job it does. And if we zoom in, it actually does a pretty good job. The problem is it's also picked up some of the lighthouse. So we're going to need to deselect that. So we're going to use the Polygonal Lasso tool. The regular Lasso tool is this one. We're going to choose the Polygonal one, which draws in straight lines. So let's hit L. And I'm holding down the Alt key. Notice it turns it to a minus. The tool has that minus now. It's going to subtract from the image. So I'm just going to click and drag in straight lines. Since this is all straight line stuff we're doing, I'm going to come right down the roof line of the house. There's nothing in there we need. Come around to the roof again, right up to the side. And I've got a window ledge here, a window framing here. We'll get that back in. And up to the red part again, and then double click. And now there we go. Now you can see we've got our lighthouse, we've got the building, we've just got the sky selected. So before we do anything else, we go to Selection, Save Selection, call it Sky, or whatever you want to call it. So there we have sky. So now we have that selected, and we can deselect it, which is Command or Control D. Now let's go get our new sky to put in. So here's our sky. I select the layer. Let's back off on the zoom a little bit. Get the marquee tool, this square, and drag basically the entire sky. It's okay if we get some of the sea down there. And copy this. Edit, copy, or Command or Control C. Now that piece that we just selected is now sitting on the clipboard. So we can deselect that. Again, Command D. In fact, we can turn off that layer. And now let's come back down to our lighthouse layer. Let's bring our sky selection back. So we go to Select, Load Selection, Sky. I had two of them there for some reason. Now there's our selection. Now remember, the new sky that we selected is sitting on the clipboard waiting for us. So let's go to Edit, Paste Special, Paste Into. By the way, if you choose Paste Into, and it's not there, only Paste in Place is there, that means you selected the wrong layer. So you can see I have the layer here. If I had chosen this one and went to Edit, Paste Special, you can see Paste Into is gone because the wrong layer is selected. So let's get the right layer. Edit, Paste Special, Paste Into. And this entire time that sky's been sitting there. Now, there's some issues. Relax, we haven't gotten there yet. Let's back off on the zoom one more. And let's get the V key, or this thing. This is the Move tool. Let's find a piece of sky that's going to be good. And you know what? I'm liking this piece right here. That's good, except I want it bigger. So let's transform this with Command or Control T and make this a lot bigger, because I want this kind of cloud line right there. That's what I want to end up behind the lighthouse. I think that's nice. And we hit enter. And you can scale a sky lots, and it doesn't seem to mind. Now, the sky is too dark, and it's causing this little fringing. So before we do anything else, let's just bring the opacity of the sky layer down to about 70% or so. Oh, even 80%. Oh, 70. 75 will split the difference. And now look at it. Now it's looking pretty good, except we still have some fringing here. Now, typically, when a sky gets down closer to the horizon, it gets lighter. And if we click on the mask that we've got in this layer, in fact, if you hit the Alt key and click on the mask, you get to see the mask, and actually there's some stuff sticking through here. What we want to do is basically paint some black to partially hide that. So let's get a brush, or the B key. I'm going to get a nice big brush, and I'm going to work at 20% is good, because that's a little smaller, with 20% black, and I have the mask, choose the mask, and watch what happens as I start to paint here with 20%. Yes, it makes the horizon go a little lighter. And now all of that fringing that we were having the problem with down along the horizon is gone. How cool is that? And you can choose some other areas too. If you think it got maybe a little too dark elsewhere, that's looking, look at that, pretty darn good. Now there's one other problem. Well, there's actually two other problems. As we zoom in, you can see there were some pieces that were imperfectly chosen up on the top of the lighthouse. So let's click on our mask. We're going to get a brush again, make a nice tiny brush. In this case, we want the hardness to be 100%. And we also want to paint it 100%. So I changed the opacity to 100%. And watch what happens here. I'm going to click and then come down to the bottom of this and click again. And look at that. It just goes right through. That's what it should be looking like. All right, so now with that black, we're getting that back here. There's also some other spots that we're showing a little bit of roughness there. Let's make sure we get everything. That should be lighter. Okay, and there's still a little bit of right on this edge here. Let's get that back in, and there we go. All right, so now that's nice and straight. So as I mentioned, there's rain falling on the lighthouse, but not, as we zoom, let's zoom in a bit. You can see, that's too much. Let's make it 100%. You can see the rain falling on the railings here, but it's not in the sky. There's no rain in the sky, so we've got to fix that. So I'm going to create another copy of this layer just so we have one. Let's put that back. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to add some noise. Let's bring this over where we can see it. Let's go to Filter, Noise, Add Noise. And 10% or so. Well, we have 11. Let's just make it 10%. And see how it adds a little bit of grain to the sky. We're not done yet. So there's our grain to the sky. Now we need to blur that grain so it looks like rain. So we go to Filter, Blur, Motion Blur. And actually the rain seems to be falling pretty straight up and down, so let's just make it 90 degrees. And now you can see behind it, it's raining. Now I don't want it to be raining quite as hard way off in the distance, so I'm going to back off on the distance of the blur just a little bit, something more like that. So now it looks like it's raining back there. Well, let's zoom in. Yeah, now you can see it looks like rain, but it's not raining as much as in the front because it's further back. Now also notice we've got a little bit of fringing going on here, right over in here, because of the way the mask was created. So I'm going to load in our mask again. Go to Select, Load Selection, and choose our second sky. Now we've got our sky selected. I'm going to increase it. I'm going to spread it out a little bit. I'm going to go to Select, Modify, and I'm going to expand the mask by 2 pixels. And notice what it just did was it just got closer to the subject. You can see now it's gone in and it looks like it's done maybe even a little more. Let's do some more. Let's go to Select, Modify, Expand. Let's do another 2 pixels. All right, so now on the areas that are concerns around these trees, I can select the mask, and those areas now that were black, they need to be white. So I hit X to put white in the foreground, get a brush, I'm going to make it bigger, and I have the mask selected, and as I paint with white on this, notice what happens. Look at that. It just goes away. It allows the underneath to show through. So we can do that with a nice big brush. Let's just get a big brush and let's just select all over this. Now we had painted with some white over top, so we're going to have to go back and do that. That's okay. In fact, let's just do the whole thing. Remember we painted on the mask white. Let's just put it back to where it was. And deselect that. And what that did was it got rid of the fringe. Notice that the fringe around things is no longer there. But now we have to go back and paint on the mask again with black to create, let's zoom off a bit again. Let's get our brush. We have to paint with black now. Remember we were at 20%. Now we have to, whoops, I have to make the hardness back to 0. 20%, and now we start to lighten that horizon so that the fringing goes away. And let's even bring it up here too. I think that looked better when it was lighter. Looks like the sky's finally starting to clear. Okay, so now we've got everything lightened up, yet we still have our rain off in the background, and you can see it here right next to, oops, didn't want to show you that much, but there it is. All right, so let's back off. And it's just waiting for a couple little Lightroom things at this point. But again, look at how much better it looks with that little rainy sky behind it. So let's save this, Command S. That will send it back into Lightroom next to our original. Alrighty, so here's our image back into Lightroom. Let's do a couple last Lightroom edits to it. I think maybe there's a little too much tree on the top. So let's take that down a little bit. That will have the effect of making the lighthouse a little more powerful in the image. Let's bring it over a little bit, but I do like having the lighthouse on the strong, right strong point of the golden ratio grid. And let's add a vignette to this. Let's bring it all the way in. Actually, I think I like that shape vignette for this one, so let's just back off. And I think we're looking pretty good. And let's see, there's the before and after with the vignette. Yep, that's good. Saturation-wise, I think I'm pretty happy with it. And actually, let's do a little bit of light painting. Let's get a brush. Auto mask is turned off. Let's hit the O key on the overlay. Just want to darken in here a little bit. Maybe through here. Just again, to maintain focus on our lighthouse. And I think I'll darken this part of the trunk that's kind of out of focus anyway. And just this bottom corner. And that's good. So we'll hit O to hide that. And let's bring the exposure down on that stuff a little bit. just to, again, make the lighthouse pop. Actually, as I'm looking at it, I think I might want the top of the lighthouse a little darker. So I'm going to turn on auto mask. And yeah, I think that's a little better. Let's just darken that up a smidge. And I think we're done. Let's hit done with that. So again, if you think, we started here. We did our edit in Lightroom here to bring it to here. We brought it into Photoshop with this sky, composited them together, and then ended up with this. And there is our final image with rain in the new sky and all. So pretty cool edit. Yes, it got a little complicated. I'm sorry if I didn't completely make sense all the time, but just understanding the tools and the things you can do with masks in order to make everything work. So thanks for watching. I hope you got something out of that you can use, and I'll see you online again soon. Bye-bye.